everyone. Welcome to DC Talks presents DC Academy, imparting ideas, insights, and innovations. My name is Ayan Gonzaga, also known as Boy Dubai, and I will be your host for tonight. Have you been living away from your family for a long time? And have you been thinking that maybe it's finally time to raise your family together here in the UAE? As we all know, UAE is one of the most popular melting pot in the world, comprised of different cultures, nationalities, and definitely one of the best countries to learn about society, independence, education, and globalization. But did you know that 90% of the population of UAE is comprised of expats like us? So it is rightly to speak about living and staying for a longer time here in the country. First, I would like to invite all of you to watch our videos in DC Academy. Just visit Denari Cash on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And tonight, I will be joined by a very special guest. She is a mompreneur in the UAE for almost 10 years now, the managing director of accountability, Decisive Zone, and a partner of Bond Chicken, a Korean fast food concept here in the UAE. And of course, she is the most influential mom to her 3 kids and husband. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome Miss Mariben Eustaquio. Thank you for joining me tonight, Mariben. I hope everything's doing well for you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So to start the conversation, can you tell us more about your journey coming into Dubai and then deciding to raise your family here?
So my husband was here. He was working in Dubai for a year, and then we joined him. I had back then 2 kids, and a month after, we were expecting our third for about a year until my youngest turned 1. I was a full-time housewife and mom. And after that, I decided that I needed, for sanity as well as for stability as well, I needed to get a job. So that's how I started my career here.
And then when was the decision to stay here longer come in? I mean, what are the key factors, if you may share to us, that help you decide that eventually you are here for the long run?
We like any expat in the UAE, we initially didn't intend to stay here as long as we are now. We decided to really stay here and make UAE our home and our base. After we had stability, basically, wasn't just in terms of our career, but as well as when the kids started their education here, and we saw that they're comfortable, they like living here, and they enjoy being here, basically.
Do you think there are some inhibitions, like this will be different from how we were raised back home, back in the Philippines, for my kids, right? But what did you see in Dubai that eventually made you, your family, the kids comfortable in terms of their education and in terms of all the other aspects of family living?
It was a lot of different things altogether. One is, well, Dubai is a very good place to live. It's very safe. We know we can leave our houses unlocked, our cars unlocked, and we could leave our bags unattended. Nothing gets lost. People are honest, and we just feel safe here. It's a good place to raise our kids. At the same time, in terms of career, and businesses, there's a lot of opportunities here in Dubai. I've seen people start from nothing. You don't have to come from an influential family, or you don't have to have, a lot of money to start a business here. You just have to know what you want. You have to work hard for it, and you'll be successful. That, I guess, and the safety.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same thing for my family. The safety indeed is very commendable. I have a peace of mind every time we go out, every time I am with the kids, And career also. This is something that would help life become sustainable here in the UAE. But for sure, there are also challenges along the way. Can you tell us more about what are the key challenges that you have faced?
From being like a full-time mom, I didn't have a nanny then, and I didn't know how I would venture into a career, leave my kids at home with somebody else that I could trust, so that I could focus on work and have peace of mind. That was initially the first struggle that we faced. I was blessed to have a nanny with us when we were starting, who I really trusted. I felt that she would it's like I'm home with the kids. She would do the things that I would normally do. That's initially when we were starting out. And as the kids grew up, of course, the challenges would change. They evolved, essentially schooling and a lot of other things.
Right.
Shifting careers as well for me and my husband has also impacted our decisions. So, for example, when the kids started going to school, when we first moved to Dubai, we didn't know that schooling was, well, the school fees were going to be exorbitant. So it's one of the things that we had to adjust to. One of the struggles, choosing their schools and all of that.
Yeah.
But eventually, everything worked out.
Right. Speaking of schooling, what do you think are the factors that you were looking for back then, before choosing the right school or academy for your kids?
When we were starting, I wasn't driving. My husband was traveling a lot. He would be out for months at a time. He was working in defense contracting. So one of the main things that we were considering was location. There should be a school bus to pick the kids up and drop them back. And also at that time, we were just starting out in Dubai, so we weren't that stable. So we were also looking at the budget to find a school that we could afford at that time.
Oh, which school bus? It reminds me of one thought where when we were kids, like 8, 9 years old, or even 7 years old, we were traveling by ourselves. Now we're commuting, we're taking the public transport. And I can't imagine that we here in the UAE can let our kids, although it is safe, as we said so, it's just that, I don't know, maybe it's because we are in a foreign land. And anyway, how about their playtime, the playgrounds? We used to play on streets back home. I mean, many of us used to. And now I think that's not quite available here in the UAE. So how do you do this? How do you cope with this?
Yeah, that's one of the challenges actually. There's not a lot of negative things about living in the UAE, but one of them is that the kids live a very sheltered life, and it's not good. Because in the long run, we want our kids to be able to be independent. They have to be street smart, and living a very sheltered life like that isn't going to help them grow as individuals. Initially, it was a struggle. The most of because of the weather here, there's very limited time the kids can have outside. Most of the things they do is just going to the malls and things like that. And we were also living in an apartment. So it's not like they could go out and just play in the streets, because the streets would be busy, right, with cars and everything. But of course, we try to expose them to different cultures by traveling with them. If I could, I would leave them in the Philippines for summer with my parents. So they could also be exposed to the culture, among others, in the Philippines. And as they grew, of course, my eldest son, who's now 15, I think we started like 2 years ago, he would bike to school. So it was also good for him. He would bike to school with his friends to and from. So those are the things. But it is really a challenge for the kids here.
Typically, we cannot just go down our apartment and have that play that we usually do on the streets back in the Philippines. Usually, I take the kids also to the parks, other than malls, because malls, you just do the same things again and again. To the park, and then let them get dirty, play with the grass, with the dirt, and things that you're saying also. Thanks for sharing that. Very insightful indeed. But let me ask some questions about you being a mompreneur, Mariben. Was it difficult for you to adjust and build your career and company here in the UAE?
In the beginning, yes, because especially when you're used to being at home 24/7 with your kids, you don't have peace of mind. When you're at work, you're always thinking of them, wondering what they're doing or what's going on at home. But eventually, over time, I managed to transition, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, from being a full-time mom to being an employee, and then from being an employee to being a businesswoman.
So it's really one big juggling experience for you, I suppose. How do you think the kids adapted to that kind of setup also in your family?
Well, they adjusted well. In the beginning, they would when I would ring the doorbell and I'd come home from work, I could already hear them yelling, shouting. They're all there waiting for me to come in. And over time, I guess they got used to it. So it wasn't special anymore. You'd go home and they'd say, okay, hi, mom.
Yeah, yeah. Do you see your kids like looking up to you and somehow already copying what you do or how your thought process goes with regards to you being a business woman?
Not yet. I don't think so yet. Although I encourage them. I talk to them a lot about all these things.
Eventually, you will be surprised they start talking your language as well or doing the things that you do. But Mariben, do you believe in work-life balance?
To be honest, I don't believe in work-life balance. I don't think there really is such a thing as work-life balance. I think it's really a matter of priority. For example, in my case, there was really no work-life balance. I had to make a decision. As an employee or as a businesswoman, there will be days where work will have to take the lead in terms of your time, in terms of your day. And there will be days where, it's your kids' birthdays, they have something in school. So that will have to take a priority as well. Or if they're sick, you have to prioritize that over work. So on a day-to-day basis, I don't think there's such a thing as work-life balance. It's really a matter of prioritizing. The same goes for, I think, long-term when you're talking about life in general. So as I'm talking from my experience. I'm not sure about all the other people out there, but in the beginning, I had to make a decision. I wanted to be with the kids until a certain age, so that was my priority. And then after that, when I decided that I needed to venture out into a career, then that became my priority as well. And then eventually, it will even it out. I think it's like a seesaw, basically. There are some days where it's not going to be a balance every day. There will be good days, probably very limited days where you feel that, I think I've balanced it well, I've managed my time well. But something has to be prioritized, really. You have to really choose what you want to focus on.
And I 101% agree with that. I also believe that it's not about work-life balance, but it's about prioritization. And as long as your family, your husband, your kids know that they are priority, but they also have to understand that they have to give way when work calls, I think it's a good environment. It's a good mindset to be in, not just always asking what's happening to your work-life balance, right? So thank you for sharing that, Mariben. I want to ask you, for families who are watching right now that are probably thinking of moving here in the UAE or bringing their families here in the UAE to be with them, what should they consider to eventually decide that it is indeed a good decision to bring the families here and stay together?
I always believe that things just work themselves out. If you overthink something, let's say, planning to come here, it's good to plan, of course, but if you overthink things, you will just delay the process, delay being together as a family. If this is for families that are separated, or also families who want to move here to find a job. But of course, if they want to carefully consider their options before coming here, I think if they have kids, they're raising a family, they have to be aware of the expenses. Expenses here in the UAE, the standard of living here isn't very cheap. So one is, of course, housing. Second is education, which is very important. Third is medical. So if they want to plan moving here, these are things that they have to consider. Consider the schools, look at how much they are, look at the proximity of the schools to where you intend to live, look at the rent, among other things.
Do you think for people watching probably back home or overseas, is it a good idea for them to travel here even though they don't have the job yet and find opportunities when they are here already, especially during this time? Or find something first, find an opportunity first before eventually deciding to travel?
I think it depends. At this time, we know that the job market isn't very good, although there are a lot of opportunities still. Right now, I see companies are prioritizing people who are here when they offer jobs, people who are already here. But in general, I think that yes, it's a good idea to travel to the UAE, come as a tourist, look at what's out here, look at how the life is, look at whether or not this is something that you will enjoy, that your family will be comfortable with, that your kids would like growing up in. deciding from there.
There are some myths about life in the UAE, and one of them is about laws of the country. Some people say that it is very strict here in the UAE. You cannot do as much as a family or as an individual. Also, can you share us some probably stories or insights about what's really the thing about the laws here in the UAE, and is it really something that is limiting you to do things that you usually do or you would normally do for a family?
I think the UAE is very friendly to families. It's a very good place to live in for families. In general, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know any laws that will prohibit families from living their lives to the fullest here and just enjoying. In terms of, I don't know, can you let me know, is there anything that will prohibit them?
I don't think so. There is, yeah. As long as you remain peaceful, you respect other communities, individuals,
Yes.
you are in good. Yeah.
Yes, as long as you're disciplined, and a lot of people here are, or everyone here, as far as I know, is disciplined. I don't see anyone having any issues with the laws of the UAE. The UAE is a great place to live in, for not just for individuals but also families. Being exposed to the different cultures and religion and seeing how people can live together in tolerance and in peace is a very good thing. I think that our kids will learn a lot from this, and growing up, it will help them as individuals as they venture out into the world.
Very well said, Mariben. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights to us tonight. Lastly, before I let you go, somebody asked you, Mariben, I wanted to go to the UAE and bring my family. I know you've touched this already, but as a recap, what is your biggest advice to tell these people?
I would consider a lot of things before deciding to move to the UAE. So basically, if you're moving here as a family, I would make sure that I'm clear as to what my plans are, what the goals of the family will be. If you want to live here just for financial freedom, for example, that can be your main goal. But you also have to consider other things, such as, like I said earlier, you have to consider the lifestyle that you will be living here, the education of your kids, among many other things. But UAE is a great place to live in, and I'm sure anyone would enjoy it.
Miss Mariben Eustaquio, thank you so much for sharing your stories as a dynamic mom and an entrepreneur. Definitely a lot of insightful thoughts to ponder, especially for families who would want or who would consider staying and living here in the UAE for the longer time. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We hope you learned a lot from us today. If you want to catch more of Miss Mariben or Ordinary Cash, simply leave a comment or send us a message here. This has been DC Talks presents DC Academy, imparting ideas, insights, and innovations. My name is Ian Gonzaga and I am your host. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.